Now, I've titled my message tonight, Don't Be a Settler. Now, I'm going to tell you why I call it that in just a minute, but let me tell you where the title came from. I'm a guy, I hate watching television commercials. Anybody else? I love when I've got this show DVR'd and I can just flip right through it, but occasionally that doesn't happen and I'm forced to watch a television commercial. And it's like, what did we do? Now I flip between channels. When I was a kid, I was the remote control, so if the channel got turned, I had to get up and change it. But now we just kind of flip back and forth, and we don't watch the commercials. But there was a commercial that came out just a few years ago that when I saw it was like, these are my people, first of all. But the message of the commercial kind of led me to the title for this message. So let me show you this commercial.
Dear, if we could put TVs anywhere without looking at cable wires and boxes in every room.
Mother, we are settlers. We settle for cable and the simpler things in life.
Like our drab clothing.
That's right, daughter.
And homemade haircuts.
Exactly, boy. Besides, if it weren't for wires, how would Cousin Tobias get his privacy?
Hey, shut the blanket! I need my privacy.
Don't be a settler. Get a $100 reward card when you switch to DirecTV.
Now, I know I have a really weird sense of humor. How many of you have already figured that out? This guy's strange, right? But, now watch what happens. So, the whole commercial is about DirecTV, right? And the idea is, don't be a settler and settle for second best, right? Don't be a settler and accept some cable company. Don't be a settler and accept Dish Network, right? I think that still exists. But the whole idea is, DirecTV is it, right? That's the pinnacle of what you want. So don't be a settler and take something that's less than that. And by the way, we all need our privacy, right? From time to time, we need our privacy. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a man by the name of Elisha. How many of you know of Elisha in the Old Testament, right? We're going to read about Elisha, but Elisha comes after a guy whose name was Elijah, right? Now, they're almost this tag team that's incredible. And to see them serving together for a number of years, as we're going to do tonight, and then to see as Elisha takes the opportunity that he had been given to him and used it so as not to be a settler, can really teach us, I believe, some very important truths. Here's what's happening. In the story that we're going to read tonight, Elisha is going to pass a baton. You guys get you ever watch the Olympics? And they tell you, especially with those teams that are running, that one of the most important things that happens is the passing of the baton. Did you know that as Americans, we've lost a number of gold medals because we couldn't pass the baton? True story. You can go back, you can Google it, check it out. But we've lost it because somewhere along the line, those batons could not be passed. Now, Elijah has been doing ministry, and Elijah is going to have the opportunity to pass the baton to Elisha. Before we get to our text tonight, I want to do something really strange. I've never done this in this type of setting. We're going to do it tonight. I'm going to settle an age-old debate of who is faster, boys or girls. How many of you think boys are faster? Most of the boys. A couple of girls are in agreement with you. How many of you think girls are faster? All right, so here's what I need. I don't need you volunteering yourself, but I need you guys. I need two of the fastest guys that are in here. You can't pick yourself like somebody else has got to pick you. And then I need two of the fastest girls that are in here. All right, Joshua's being pointed at. Joshua, come up here. Who are we pointing at? What's your name? What's the name? Landon? All right, so I've got Landon and Joshua for the boys. Have a seat. Nobody picked you. Landon and Joshua here for the boys. Now, I need two girls. All right, I've got these two right here. All right, come on up here. What's your name? What is it? Devea. You've told me that, and I'm terrible with names. What's your name? Kayla. All right, so here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to settle. Look at them stretching. These guys are like, yeah, woo, like we got this, right? You don't even have shoes on. How are you going to be faster than the girls who didn't have shoes on? You had Crocs. Look, have you met those guys that give an excuse for losing before they ever lose? Right? You've met those guys, right? All right, here's what's going to happen tonight. All right, I need you guys to line up beside each other right in the middle of the stage. We're gonna settle this once and for all. You guys right here, you need to pick out who's going to be your lead and who's going to be your anchor. You need to do the very same thing. All right? So here's a couple of ground rules. Girls, one at a time, you're going to run that way. Boys, one at a time, you're going to run this. Does anybody else see disaster happening in the midst of this thing? You got to love it, right? Hey, you can't go to a youth conference or a camp without going to the ER at least once. Am I right? Can I get a witness? So the girls are going to go that way. The boys are going to go this way. They're going to pass the batons. By the way, these are special batons to me, so please don't drop them and break them and dent them up or anything, all right? So who's running first? Caleb? Landon, I knew that. I was just seeing if everybody else knew that or not. So Landon's first over here. Who's first over here? Kayla? Is that right? Look at me getting names right. All right, so now you're looking at 4 of the fastest people in this room. How many of you think the girls have got this? Make some noise. That was one of the weakest things I have ever heard in my... Like, if I were giving out a sympathy trophy, like, I would give it to them, right? Not even a participation trophy, like a sympathy trophy. Let's try it one more time. How many of you think these 2 girls are going to rock this place tonight? All right, on the other hand, I've got Joshua and Landon over here. Joshua with no shoes on. But he still thinks he can beat the girls. We're gonna see how this goes, all right? So, watch out for one another. No collisions, right? Watch out for any equipment. I probably should have walked and made sure everything was clear. Oh, you don't need to cheer for the boys. You're going around the whole building, and you're going to come and you're going to pass the baton to him, and he's going to do the same thing. You're going around the whole room, all the way around, and you're going to come back and pass the baton to her. All right? All right, on your marks. Get set. I didn't ask who was going to be. How about the boys? How many of you think the boys have got this? On your mark. Get set. Go. Wow, look at them go. Oh, it's going to be a collision right in the middle. Oh, wow, right dead in the middle. They are on it. Here we go. Got to pass the baton. Oh, here we go. We got some speed going. Where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, no, she just fell. Hey, how about it for the boys, right? You okay? I knew somebody would fall. Hey, give them a hand for helping me out tonight. I don't think far enough in advance to get prizes and stuff, so that doesn't work. Now, why is this important? Show boys superiority. No, here, look, I want you to see this passage because Elijah, now here's what Elijah is going to do. You're going to see it in the passage. He's got a baton. Okay, now it's not literal, it's a cloak, but we're going with the baton because we can see this. And Elijah, who's in a very difficult place in his ministry. In fact, he had just prayed down fire from heaven. You guys remember the story, 1 Kings 18, when like they're praying to see whose God would respond, and they're like, hey, maybe your God's in the bathroom. Like, pray a little louder. Remember that whole thing? And Elijah prays, and fire comes down from heaven and devours all the wood. It was just this crazy, amazing thing. And it's like, Elijah, Elijah. Like, it's crazy cool. And then all of a sudden, Elijah gets word that the queen is not a happy camper right now. She already didn't like Elijah, but now she really doesn't like Elijah. And so the queen says, you get word to Elijah that the next time I see him, right, I'll have his head on a platter. And she's serious about it. You guys remember what Elijah did after that? He ran, right? And where'd he go? He went out into the woods. He's out there sitting under a tree, and he's just crying, God, this is so bad. Like, I'm the only believer in the world. I'm all by myself, and nobody else loves God. I must be the only one. And then God fed him. Remember the raven and the brook. Oh, like, God does this amazing thing for Elijah, encourages him and helps him. And then all of a sudden, God is going to give Elijah kind of this newfound purpose for what he's doing with his life. Look at 1 Kings 19 and pick up reading with me in verse number 19. So he, this is Elijah, departed from there and found Elisha. Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him, and he was with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen, he ran after Elijah and said, "Let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I'll follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" And he returned from following him, took the yoke of oxen, sacrificed them, boiled their flesh with the yokes of the oxen, gave it to the people, and they ate. And watch this. Then he arose, and he went after Elijah and assisted him. This is crazy cool to me. I love it's just such an intriguing story because there's so many unique aspects about it. But throughout the entire Old Testament, there were only two spiritual leaders who had the opportunity to choose their successors. Moses was one of those. Who did Moses choose? Joshua. And Elijah was the other who's now choosing Elisha. Let me tell you some things about Elisha that's going to play into his story. He's born into a godly family. Literally, his name means God is salvation. It's a pretty cool name, right? I don't know what your name means. My name, Brian, means strength, right? Virtue, strength. If you've never done a word study on your name, like, find out what it is. So Elisha's parents literally named him God is salvation. But his family was wealthy. Elisha's parents, man, they had some change, right? Like they had this thing going on. They possessed, the Bible tells us, that they had 12 pairs of oxen. Say, what's that even mean? Well, a pair of oxen, right, would, of course, constitute 2. So 12 times 2 equals 24. One oxen, now in our day, one oxen would basically be the equivalent to having a car. One oxen equals one car. Which meant that if you had 24 oxen, 24, just making sure that you're there, they would have a driveway, right? How awesome is that? Like every day of the month, you just drive a different car, right? I don't know what I want to drive today. Let's pick out. So that's the family that Elisha is from. And in this particular case, he's leading the oxen, right? Like he's from behind them, literally behind the 12th set, but they're all his, which means that he probably had servants pulling all of the others. There's healthy family relationships. What does he say to Elijah? Let me go home and tell my mother and father goodbye. He had a love for his neighbors and his friends. In fact, when he's about to leave, you know what he does? They don't throw a party for him. He throws a party for them. Right? It's totally different than what we could, like if you're leaving, we'll probably throw you a party and say, we're going to miss you. In this case, it's like, I'm leaving, I'm having a party, come on over. And he did. And so Elisha has this opportunity in the midst of all, like you would line it all up and say, man, I'd love to be like Elisha. But can I say something to you tonight? I believe, and I think the story will play it out as you'll see, I believe that in Elisha's heart something was missing. He had it all, right? It was all going just the way he wanted it. Like things were lining up and they were playing out in just the way that he thought that they should. But somewhere deep within, I believe that he was restless, kind of unfulfilled, almost as if, is this all I'm going to do with my life? Like to work a farm every day and the animals and then to pass that along to my, like, is that really all that there is? Is there not something greater for me? Maybe you felt that way. Maybe this week you've already begun to think like, is all I want to do just kind of exist in life? Is all that I want to do spiritually? So that Elisha knew that the baton was being handed to him and he's now going to become Elijah's successor. Now that's mixed feelings in and of itself, right? Like if you're talking about the stage and the opportunity to do great things and everybody going, Elijah, Elijah. But now they've been going, Elisha, Elisha. Like that part's really cool. But the part of living on the run, knowing that the queen's out for your head, walking me on the shoulder, and I'm going to do what he told me to do. You know, Elisha, the Bible says in verse 20 that he left his oxen and he ran after Elijah. It's one of the craziest things to me, like, dude, say something, right? He didn't say a word, and Elisha is running. Okay, I'll do it. Elijah says, what have I even done to you? Now, as I'm studying this life of Elisha and his response, there are several things that I notice. One is that for Elisha, this was an immediate response. This is not a, you know what, let me go home and think about it for a little. You know what he did? Yes. You know how we press in these kind of services to make a decision like now is the time? First of all, the Scripture says now is the day of salvation. But we also know that when it comes to making big decisions spiritually, that you don't push those things aside. You don't say, you know what, I think I'll wait till I get home and talk it over with my friends. That's the worst thing you can do. For Elisha, it was immediate. Here's the baton. The cloak is on your back. What will you do? And Elisha runs after Elijah because Elijah's not even staying around to discuss the matter. And Elisha knows that if he doesn't run after Elijah, Elijah's gone and the opportunity is gone. You can't sit on a fence forever. Right? And you've already been challenged multiple times already to be thinking through what are the decisions God is calling you to do. And for Elisha, it was an immediate response that, yes, this is my answer. Yes, God, I will do what you want me to do. I wrote down about Elisha, it was a humble response. Elisha doesn't say, do you know who I am? Like I own this property. You can get off my property. He didn't do that. Elisha doesn't say, Elijah, who do you think you are? My name's cooler than yours anyway. Right? He doesn't do that. You know what else? He just humbly accepts exactly what it is that he is being tasked with doing. I wrote down that it was a human response. When Elisha says, just let me go home and tell my parents goodbye. You know, he knew that's going to be a heartbreak. That's a tough thing. When you're telling mom and dad goodbye, when you're walking away from the only thing that you've ever known, he appears to be a family man in the best sense of the word. And he's not going back. By the way, this is different than the case. You're thinking, well, what about the time when somebody said to Jesus, let me go to tell my parents goodbye? It's a totally different scenario. In that story with Jesus, it was, let me go home for a few years until my parents die, and then I'll come back and find you. You don't call me, I'll call you. In this case, Elisha, man, he loved his parents. He wanted to honor them. He wanted to do what was right. And so what does he do? He says yes, and the human response of even brokenness and tears, he recognizes that this is something that God is calling me to do. And listen to me, I don't want to be a settler. If God's calling you to that life, that's okay. But if God is giving you the cloak and the responsibility and pushing you along, don't be a settler and take over here when God has what for you is over here. So what's Elisha do? Kills the oxen, uses them to feed the poor in the community, have this party, this celebration. In fact, according to scholars, one ox would typically feed a family of 5 for a year and a half. How many oxen did Elisha have? 24, right? So think of the numbers of people that he could feed. And what kind of party was that? That everybody's coming. Man, they got the smoker going and they got the grill going and they got some stuff on the fire. And maybe they're even like baking up some stuff and boiling. Like, man, there's food. There's meat everywhere. This is a meat lover's paradise at that point. And then you know what Elisha does? This is interesting to me. Not only does he kill the oxen, invite everybody to come and eat it, but Elisha then burns the plows. Why is that important? Because it signified, I'm leaving that for this. I'm leaving the good for the better. I'm not going to be a settler. I'm not going to have a plan B of, well, if this whole Jesus thing doesn't work out, then at least I got something to go back to. That's not his thinking at all. Like he literally burns it all and chases after Elijah, abandoning everything that he's got. And now, in the midst of this, Elijah, who's the CEO, he's still the big dog in the house, now uses Elisha as a servant. Kind of seems weird, doesn't it? Like if I'm Elisha, I'm like, dude, I didn't come here to make your coffee. Right? I can still be out there in the fields making money, living at home. Why am I making copies for you? And why do I fix your coffee every morning? But Elisha was content that exactly what God wanted him to do was in that moment prepare for where it was that God was taking him. And for the next several years, he would faithfully pour his life into Elijah and literally care for him. Listen, I want you to understand tonight that you're offered the same thing. God has a plan and a purpose for your life, a plan beyond anything that you've ever asked or imagined, but it's going to cost you everything. There is no, let me hold on to the plows. There is no, let me keep an ox or two just for when times get, no. It's a lay it all down, give it all up, and do so for the cause of Christ. Now let's fast forward. 18 years. 2 Kings 2. Flip over a few pages in your Bible. Go to 2 Kings chapter 2. What's he been doing for 18 years? Waiting on Elijah. Taking care of him every day. I don't know if he drank coffee. I have to think he did because he was a godly man. Most godly men, all godly men drink coffee. Can I get a witness? Right? I don't know if that's what he, but I believe that. So Elisha's been taking care of him, serving alongside of him in a position lower than I believe what he ever imagined for the last 18 years. In 2 Kings 2, Elijah is about to go to heaven. Remember how he got there? Not the way you're going to get there, right? We're going by death, or Jesus is coming back to get us, one or the other. Elijah in a chariot. How cool would this be, right? Like if there would have been a cell phone that day, you know Elisha would have been like making sure he's getting the very best view and the image, but he doesn't get that, right? All we get is a verbal description of everything that's going to happen. And now I want you to pick up reading in verse number 9 of 2 Kings 2. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I'm taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me." And he said, "You've asked a hard thing. And yet if you see me as I'm being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so." As they still went on and talked, right? You can just see them like having this conversation and maybe talking about the details, and Elijah saying, "Now don't forget to do this when you get back to the office." Like, I don't know what it went like, but I just imagine this conversation. So here they are, as they talk, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw him no more. Now, you could read this and go, man, that Elisha, he's kind of stuck on himself, wasn't he? I just want to do twice what you did. Now, this was an Old Testament thing, that the double portion was like a double share. It was an added blessing that would oftentimes be given to a firstborn. And Elisha is just asking that the very same power and touch and hand of God that was on your life, I want that. I want that kind of inheritance. I want that kind of a spiritual impact so that I can do what you have been able to do if the might and the power of God will rest upon me like it did you. I love this story. I love this imagery of Elijah passing it off to Elisha. And I love Elisha going, "Yes, Lord, I'll do what you want me to do. What is it you're calling me to do? What is it that your hand is on my life for? Yes, God, I'll do whatever it is." And then he's in this holding period for 18 years when it had been really easy to say, "I'm out, right? I'm going back home. I'm done with this thing." But instead, presses forward to exactly what God wanted. He refused to be a settler. I want you to see tonight from this passage 3 truths, 3 principles from the life of Elisha that you and I need, not ought to. Let me tell you what God's purpose is for your life tonight. That you, the craftsmanship, the created one of God, the one that He saved, that He gave His life for, that He sacrificed everything for, that when He molded you into the likeness of God and into the very specific image that you are making up tonight, that He has for you a great purpose with your life. You tonight are His workmanship. You are for His purposes. God saved you for a reason. God created you for a reason. And Paul's like, look, we're not working for our salvation. We're working from our salvation. And working from our salvation says, I realize God made me in a very specific way, and I am His art piece. How many of you are good in art? A couple of you? I was a terrible art student. I still remember my art teacher from Beckley Junior High School way back in her. I remember her very plainly. She didn't like me. The truth is, she probably liked me. She didn't like my work. Man, I'd pour into that picture. Like, she'd put something on the wall and it's like, just draw this picture. And I'd turn it in and she'd be like, seriously? You ever had a teacher look at you and go, seriously? Right? Like, did you even look at the picture on the wall? I did. You ever thought about getting glasses? I did not, right? But look, I mean, I would try. I'm giving it everything that I've got. And I promise you, there is nowhere in our home that you'll find a piece of art that I created. Am I telling the truth? You don't have to be that enthusiastic about it. My wife, who you'll meet tomorrow, is an incredible artist. Now, she would deny that, but I've got sketchbooks full of stuff that she's drawn, and I can flip through there, and I look at it, and I go, you like traced that, didn't you? Because that's the only way I could do it. No, I didn't trace it. So one day we were dating, and I was like, all right, prove it. I was like, draw that right there. Now, that's not the best look. I get that, right? She still thinks that it is, and that's another. But so I'm like, draw it. You know what she did? Like, she sketched out, sitting there, like she sketches out like my face. And it's like, well, I look pretty good, don't I? On paper, not necessarily in person, but in paper, right? For what she does. Now look, I can look at those things, and that's a masterpiece, and I can flip through it and go, man, that's incredible, and it's been framed. These things have been hung up, and they've been put in positions. It's like, man, that's good. Listen to me. When God created you, you know what He did? He sat back and said, that's good. And by the way, He didn't just say, that's good. You want to know what He really said about you? That's very good. That's the only time He said it was when He created us. That's very good. Now watch this. Paul is saying, you're His workmanship. You are a piece of art that God sketched out, that God drew, that God designed, that God put together, that you and I would be doing His good works. And we only do that when we understand that His purposes are greater than my purposes. And Elisha, you got it all going for you, dude. Like, keep it up. Soon you're going to go from 24 oxen to 30 oxen. Like, dude, keep it up. But God's purposes are greater than my purposes. Principle number 2 from the text. I don't have to understand fully to obey immediately. Now, I get the fact that there are thousands of years between us and the story as it was told in 1 Kings 19. I understand that there are cultural differences. I understand that there are historical things that we don't understand. Like, I get all of that. But I try to put myself in Elisha's shoes and be like, if I'm Elisha's parents, I'm like, hey, son, did you ask any questions? Did you ask anything? Right? Did you get any of the details about what you're supposed to be doing? And all that Elisha knew was that it was his job to kill the cows and burn the plows. Right? That's all that he knew. It's like the disciples who left everything to follow Jesus. There was no plan B. There was no, what if this doesn't work out? There was no, what if my friends don't like this decision? There was no, what if this is not the popular? Like, none of those things are playing out in his mind. And when he did not understand completely what he was to be doing, Elisha just said, yes, sir. His call was twofold: be something and do something. So Elisha picks up the mantle. He takes the baton in his hand, burns the plows, kills all the cows, has this party. Man, it's a grand thing. Why is he doing that? He understood God's purposes are greater than ours. And he also understood that I don't have to understand fully to obey immediately. Listen to me. It's not wrong to plow a field. But if you're plowing for the wrong motivation and your plowing keeps you from Jesus, burn the plow. Right? Like having friends, having unsafe friends is not a bad thing. Right? We want to reach them. I appreciate what Brother Christian said this morning. We've got to be careful about their influence. We want to reach them with the gospel. But at the moment that those friends begin to influence you in the wrong way, I'm not going to say burn the friends, but I will say sometimes we have to walk away from them, right? Like, don't leave here going, okay, line them up, we're burning them. He burned the plows, we're burning the friend. Like, no, but here's what I know. What I do know is if they're keeping you from following Jesus, then get away from those things. Even things that are good can be a hindrance if they keep us from following the Lord. And Elisha was saying, I'm following God's call, and no matter what happens, I'm not going back. The old life is gone forever. A new day has come for me. I don't have to understand fully to obey immediately. Remember what Elisha did when the cloak was put on him? He ran after Elijah. That's kind of a sight to see too, like chasing him down. Like, dude, you didn't say anything. Like, tell me something. And all he could say was, yes, I will do what you want me to do. My story personally, when I was in high school, God called me to preach when I was 14. How many of you are 14? Where's 14-year-olds? All right. I was 14. Just before I turned 15, I preached my first sermon, June of 1988. Started preaching. I knew all through my high school years that this was God's call in my life and that I would be serving in some way in full-time ministry, pastoring, leading, doing something in that regard. I was at the same time, while I was in high school, I was in an electronics technician program, which is much different then than it is today, but that's another story. So I go through this entire program. I'm graduating from the program, and I get a phone call. The guy on the other end of the phone, he identifies himself as being this lead electronic technician at the Newport News Shipbuilding Company in Newport News, Virginia. Here's what he says. I'm coming to your town next week, and there's you and 2 other guys that are in your school that I'd like to sit down with and talk to you about the possibility of coming to work for us at Newport News Shipbuilding Company. Now, my initial thought was, I don't think so. Then I got to thinking about this thing. He'd already told me like some of the initial things that I was going to make. Now listen to when I started working, I'm going to date myself here for just a second. What's minimum wage today? $4.60, I think. What is it? $4.60. No, it's higher than that. Like if you work fast food today, it's $15 an hour. At least in New York it is. Like it's crazy. You don't know what minimum wage was when I started working? $3.15. Right? You remember that? So I worked like 2 weeks, and then it went up to $3.35. I thought, man, this is big. Within a year or so, it had gone up to $4.25, and I thought, man, I'm rolling in the money. I can put 2 tanks of gas in this week. And they come before me, and they put a piece of paper down on the table, and they show me how many thousands of dollars I can make the very first year that I sign up for their program. They're going to pay me to go to school, to finish a degree in electronics, and the whole time I'm in school I'm getting paid, and then I get paid to work, plus they're giving me like this house. I mean, it was crazy. For a 17-year-old boy at the time, like, I'm looking at all of this, and it's like, what an amazing opportunity. I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm just being honest. I went home and was like, you know what? I like preaching and all, but maybe I can do that like in my spare time. Now, you remember what God called me to do, right? And what God had already confirmed long before. And so I'm walking through this period of my life. There was about a 2-week period where, man, I was back and forth. On this day, it's like, I'm going to Newport News. I've got this job lined up. I'll preach some on weekends, but I'll be making X number of dollars just to go. And then the next week it's like, no, you know what? God called me to preach, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm supposed to be going to college here, and I'm supposed to be training for ministry. And man, I'm back and forth until finally God just had to bring me to my knees to teach me what He taught Elisha. I don't need you to understand everything right now. I just need you to put your yes on the table. I don't need you to have all the questions answered of where you would be and how you're going to serve and how much you're going to make and where you're going to lead and where you're going to pastor. Like, if I would have known all these things up front, I don't know how my life would have played out. But God says, I just want you to say yes. You don't have to have all the answers before you say yes. And Elisha just says, yes, sir. I'll do what you called me to do. Why is that important? Because some of you guys, man, you're asking questions and you're like, if I can get the answer to this question, then I'll put my yes on the table. Or if this happens in my life, or if this prayer is answered, or if this situation works out, or if everybody is kind of in agreement with me, then I'll put my yes on the table. Listen, if you're doing that tonight, you're a settler. And you're sitting in your bathtub going, I need my privacy. Right? You're just settling. Like, this whole thing is just, it's what I do on weekends, but it's not my life. I go to church, but I'm not really the church. Like, I attend and I'm faithful with those things, but I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And you're settling. You're nothing like Elisha, who says, yes, I understand your purposes are greater than mine. I understand. I don't have to understand fully to obey immediately. Number 3, I'll be finished. Those that God uses the most are the ones that hold on to the least. Elisha does not say, God, I'll make a bargain with you. He doesn't do that. Remember the young man that tried to do that with Jesus in the Gospels? We call him the rich young ruler. I'll make a deal with you. Jesus is like, give it all up. Give it away to the poor. And he's like, how about we make a deal? How about we talk about this thing? And Jesus is like, you're out. And he walked away. The Bible says he walked away sadly, broken, as he realized the decision that he had made. Elisha had it all at his fingertips, could do everything that he wanted to do. And what does he request from Elijah? Just a double portion. It's ironic that Elijah, with a J, performed 8 miracles or works of God. Elisha, you want to guess how many that Elisha did? Just take a guess. 16. Remember what he asked for? A double portion. He didn't ask it in a selfish way, but Elisha goes on to accomplish greater works than what Elijah did, doing exactly double the miracles and doing it in the name of God. And the reality is, Elisha performed more miracles in the Bible than anyone else in Scripture, with the exception of Jesus himself. And just a few chapters earlier, he's just a dude. A hard-working one. He's just a guy. An ordinary guy doing his thing, living his life, fulfilling what he believed was his purpose for living, until God got a hold of him. the baton was passed to him. By the way, did you have the black one when you fell? There's a mark on I just want you to know there's a mark on my baton. I'm upset. Now watch this. So Elisha, the mantle is given, and Elisha says yes. You know why? Because he refused to be a settler. Now, I'm old, but I'm not that old to where that I don't remember what it was like to be sitting where you're sitting. Statistically, if statistics are true, sitting in this room tonight are some teenagers that are just content to know that one time I knelt and I said a prayer and I know that I'm going to heaven when I die, and you're content with that. Statistically, some of you are here tonight and you're like, I've not even gone that far. I've settled with, I'm just waiting until I get through school. I'm just waiting until the time is right. I'm just waiting until I've kind of lived my life the way that I want to live. And eventually I'll say yes to God, but I've not done that yet. Statistically, there's some of you in this room like that tonight. Statistically, there are some of you in this room that God's already been tasking with what His calling is for you. And up to this point, you've just been a settler. Don't leave here like that tonight. Up to this point, you've just kind of been doing your own thing. And the reality is God brought you to this place as His workmanship so that He could do a work in your life to say to you tonight, don't be a settler. Don't settle. Don't say it's good enough that I prayed that prayer. It's good enough that I read the Bible once a week. It's good enough that I just live the Christian life while I'm at church and not around my friends. Don't settle for those things. Recognize that God wants to do for you what God did for Elisha. Some of us tonight need a Copernican revolution. You guys, you know what that is, right? You know that for years, the belief was that the earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around the earth. And then this guy named Copernicus comes along and he's like, that's stupid. Right? And proved that the earth is not the center of the universe. We're literally revolving like around the sun. And some of you walked into this conference living life like it's all about you. You do you. You do your time. You figure out the way that you want to do it. You play by your rules. And God wants to revolutionize your life this week. But don't be a settler. Let's bow our heads for prayer.